It should be live on YouTube. Okay. And we should now be live on Mixer as well. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
I still got to do that because it's probably not right.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, everyone. We'll be starting in just a moment. Let's turn my mute on phone.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Hello, Jason. Jason's in the chat.
Of course, I couldn't hear it. Okay, I'm good. Sending out the tweets. It is tweeted.
Nice.
It is now retweeted.
That same. There are some Microsoft employees on Twitter who are so just by the book. It's
like, call them nerds.
Yeah, like people are talking about like just changing around the feature IDs in the latest decidable to enable some features that aren't air quotes ready to be played with yet. Who cares? Just let people do it. No one cares. But some employees are like, no, don't ever do this. It's gonna break everything. Just chill out. Just relax. It's software. You can wipe your PC if you need to. Nobody needs to panic. If you don't want people to play all the features, don't put them in there to be enabled. It's simple as. Anyway, let's get started.
Just 2 more seconds. Just downgrading my video quality so I get all the bandwidths.
Oh, you need those bandwidths.
Lots of bandwidths.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 174 for April 10th, 2020.
Wow, you're jumping 2 days ahead there.
I know, almost had it. It's been a very long week again, as still stuck in the house, and hair is getting. This is level 4 chaos now. We're entering new hairstyle phases, and I'm not going to cut my own hair.
You might look like Kylo Ren soon.
Huh?
You might look like Kylo Ren soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and same with the facial hair is getting a little crazy. I'll probably trim it eventually, but honestly, who cares? I'm in my pajamas. I've taken 3 showers this week. It's just a mess. I'm falling apart. No gym. I have a rowing machine. I use it a couple times, but yeah, this is just all, But hopefully everyone that's listening to this is healthy and happy and, dealing with this pandemic still in good ways. We always, of course, wish everybody health and, hopefully no one's sick. But anyways, on to happier news. We got lots of things to talk about this week because it kind of was a busy week. So we're going to open up. XPS 13 review is live on Windows Central. It just went up today. I've been talking about it for a few weeks now. And I'll just kind of go over it a bit, but the, spoiler alert is this is the first time I believe I gave a laptop a 5 out of 5. It's basically perfect. Some people took issue with the fact that I said I gave it a con, doesn't have an LTE, and how it can be perfect. But even I love LTE, but even I admit like that's a very niche thing. And I'll talk a little bit about why it doesn't have LTE, and contextualize it. XPS 15 leak. So apparently on Dell's website, and this is something Microsoft is familiar with, looks like an image of 2 new XPS laptops was put up by accident, and someone got it and shared it. And it looks to be the XPS 15 and possibly an XPS 17, which has been kind of floating around as a rumor that they may be doing. And we'll talk about why that is, why does it actually kind of make sense, and what to expect from this thing, which looks to be very exciting. Then Zach will talk about the new Insider build that came up this week. What's new, what's different, what's the status, of course, of the spring update or the April-May update. And people get mad if I say spring. Sorry, you Aussies. I know it's not spring there. but we'll talk about that a little bit as well. The other big news, of course, was Windows 10X and possibly the Surface Neo are rumored to be delayed. And we'll talk about the reasons behind that. And, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, obviously, we always want stuff early, um, but still, we'll talk about why that is and sort of the shift in strategy that's kind of going on. And that'll be Zach's thing. He's got a lot of info there. And the Surface Duo, which is not delayed. In fact, we're still sticking to our story, if I'm correct here, that we do expect it to actually launch early. That is, it was originally slated for holiday 2020, but everything we're hearing is still summer 2020. And we'll talk about why that is. And in fact, there was the first confirmed sample camera image from the Surface Duo. We say confirmed because we're pretty sure Panos has probably been sharing photos for the last couple of weeks or months. We don't know. This is the first time we know for a fact that it came from the Surface Duo. We'll talk about what we think about the photo and, all that stuff since people love talking about Duo. But Zach, how are you hanging in there this week? I saw you were outside earlier this afternoon.
I
You look
was.
extremely tan now. I mean, you're as dark as I am. It's
I
it was
wish.
really
No, by the way, I wasn't outside. Outside, I was on my roof, so still quarantined, still technically at home. I was just at the very top level of my house, so I could get some sun for a while because I haven't seen the sun in like 4 months. So,
yeah, it
uh,
is
I
is a
needed
little
that.
crazy.
Yeah. Otherwise, not too bad. I've been relaxing today since it's a holiday in the UK today and Monday. So a nice long weekend for us. Not that we could do anything with it, but not having to open Slack is nice.
This is true. I did go hike a mountain on Monday, which is really good to get outside, move my what are becoming my bird legs as my muscle atrophies. I've actually lost weight. I mentioned that last time. For sure, it's just muscle. I think it's just muscle just disappearing. But it was nice to get outside. I did lug the Panasonic Toughbook 55, which I still want to review. I've had that for like 6 months now. Uh, but every time I think of like the end of the world in pandemics and a post-apocalypse future, I have that laptop ready, and I think it's just so cool. And what makes it cool is not the fact that it's a tough book, so it has a handle built in, which makes it awesome for carrying. Um, it has really amazing hardware. It's completely modular, and it has LTE, which is of course my favorite thing. So I actually took it up on top of a mountain. I've done this twice now, just to use a computer on top of a mountain, which I just think it's just kind of cool, and I like doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, hopefully it'll get out this weekend again. All right, let's talk about some news here. So Dell XPS 13, as I said, this is the 9300. It's now available. It was announced at CES. It was I remember when I first saw it, even my jaw dropped. So Dell basically is on a new design language for the XPS line. And Dell is very conservative with designs. Unlike, and I've said this before in the podcast, like HP, like I feel like it's like they look at their watch and like, oh, it's been 9 months, completely redesign it. And they just change everything. And sometimes it's been really good, but I think some of the stuff they've been doing on Spectre is just getting a little too fancy, and I don't really love the gem cut thing. Although I have to admit, like their corners where they put the Type C thing is pretty creative. Dell, on the other hand, picks a really, really awesome design and then just sticks with it for about 3 to 4 years. And they do that for numerous reasons. But so far, it's worked out for them in the sense that even when the XPS 13, the previous version, was getting old and long in a tooth, it still looked incredible. Like there wasn't anything else that looked like it. Well, they finally started changing this again. They started with the XPS 13 2-in-1, which I reviewed last year. It's one of my favorite laptops. I just love the design. I like the keyboard. I didn't give it a perfect rating though. There were some issues with it. It had a little bit of coil whine to it. The fans were a little bit loud. The keyboard is divisive, but still, it's one of the most impressive 2-in-1s out there. Plus, Dell went to 16 by 10, and they're like, yeah, well, it makes sense now because it turns into a tablet, and we find that for that usage, that aspect ratio works. I'm like, you're absolutely right. So then the question was, are they going to do that with the XPS 13, the non-convertible? And that one was 16 by 9. And the problem with their Infinity Edge display, they made their display so thin and so tight for the bezels that at 16 by 9, it made the laptop really short. So your palms would kind of hang off, and it just was kind of cramped almost. By going 16 by 10, they get a bigger keyboard and everything like that. So they did put the 16 by 10 on this XPS 13, which was great. But they completely redesigned it too. It's got a new keyboard on there. It's got more powerful speakers, and I've hammered Dell on audio before. Their speakers were never really great. These are good speakers. Like I'm satisfied with these speakers. I mean, I suppose they could be better, but these are speakers that when I would play movies and watch YouTube, I was like, this sounds good. I'm happy with this. Um, they, of course, did move the camera back to the top bezel. So they did that, I think, last year at some point. And they did that on the XPS 13 2-in-1 as well, but it didn't have Windows Hello IR. And now it does. And so that works very well. They got the fingerprint reader built in there, two Type-C ports, both Thunderbolt 3, of course, micro SD card reader. It's just it was perfect. There was nothing wrong. The display is fantastic. And I've been hammering companies to use anti-reflective technology on their displays. Dell started that. HP is now doing it, and Lenovo does it a bit too. But Dell does it the best, and they also have the best displays in terms because of Sharp IGZO, which I just think look really, really nice. But this display, you can get Full HD non-touch matte, Full HD touch anti-reflective, or you can just go all out and get 4K touch anti-reflective. I think 4K is overkill, but if you want it, it's there. They all hit around 600 nits of brightness and actual peak, so you get some HDR effects as well, and it does support Dolby Vision. It's just one of my favorite displays, and it's one of those laptops you look at it, and it's the most beautiful looking laptop, I think. But in terms of performance, the fans are quiet. There's no coil whine. It's the first Dell laptop I can definitively say does not have coil whine on it. And it's just everything about it. It's just great. So I gave it a 5 out of 5. Now, it doesn't have LTE, and that bugs me personally, but there are no other 13-inch consumer premium Ultrabooks that have LTE either. So I feel I couldn't ding them for points. I mentioned it. I think it's worthy of mentioning. But I couldn't take points off because I can't point. Microsoft doesn't have that on their Surface laptop. HP doesn't have it on their regular Spectre, which hasn't even been refreshed. They do have it on the X360 Spectre, which I did give them credit for. Lenovo doesn't have it on their Yoga series. So I can't really ding Dell for that. And Dell would be like, if you want LTE, we see that for our business customers, and they have it in their Latitude 7400 as an option. And that's what they would say. I've actually asked Dell about this, why they don't use LTE in XPS. And there's two reasons. One is just design. XPS has all metal exteriors, and it's hard to do antennas with them without putting a big line through that and use a ceramic material. So we'd have to specifically design for it, and they didn't want to change the aesthetics too much. The other one is just flat out economics. They told me in the US they did not see people wanting to buy or asking for LTE in their laptops. And I actually believe that. As much as I wish it weren't true, for consumers, we're not seeing a huge uptick of LTE yet in laptop, at least demand. Part of that's expense, part of that's Wi-Fi everywhere. That may be different in Europe a bit, but that's the reason. If they could add that one thing, I would be super pleased. But I can't ding them for points on it because, like I said, no one else has that either. But if you're looking for a straight up Ultrabook, non-convertible laptop, there's nothing that has all this. The battery life, I got between 6.5 hours and 10 hours. I averaged around 8, and that's a Core i7. You can get up to 32 gigs of RAM. You can get up to 2 terabyte SSD. The SSD is user upgradable, and it's actually a very good one. It's just great. I'm content. There's nothing else I would do in this laptop. I don't know what they would do next year either. So
we're done, guys. Time to wrap it up. We've completed.
Seriously. Yeah, I mean there is that, right? I mean, it'll be faster, right? But the only thing they can do is add LTE to it, and that's it. But it's perfect. I definitively say that. I have a lot of these Ultrabooks. I love Surface Laptop 3, but Laptop 3 has downsides, including ports. It doesn't have Thunderbolt 3. It doesn't have a fingerprint reader, which some people like that option of. The display is glossy and not anti-reflective. But this one checks it all. And compared to the Apple MacBook 13-inch, is about $250 cheaper. And Apple's still using 8th gen in their MacBook 13s. I didn't know that.
Really? Wow. See,
Yes.
I'd argue the Surface Laptop 3 is the perfect laptop from 2 years ago.
Yeah, so the selling point of Laptop 3 is it's just super enjoyable to use. It's got the best ergonomics. I love the Alcantara. The keyboard, the trackpad are perfect. There's no bloatware. Everything runs well. It gets very good battery life. Like it just comes up to that point if you're like, I need Thunderbolt 3, or I'd prefer to have Thunderbolt 3. I want to use an external GPU. Like that is a group of people. Or some people are like, I prefer having a fingerprint reader and Windows Hello. Or there's just certain features you may want, which you can't get on that laptop. But man, I really love my laptop 3. I'm not going to deny it. But in terms of price, you can configure the XPS 13 with a Core i5 and 16 gigs of RAM, which is the sweet spot. I don't think most people need a Core i7. If you're just using this for productivity, Word, Office, web browsing, just get the Core i5. It's quad core. You'll be more than pleased with it. You'll save a couple $100. You'll get slightly better battery life, but you can at least get for an extra $100, 16 gigs of RAM. Microsoft doesn't do that. Microsoft gives you get a Core i5, you max out at 8 gig. If you want 16 gigs of RAM, you got to jump to the Core i7. Now it's $1,600 versus $1,450 for Dell. So again, at least I like having configuration options. I think HP still is a little bit better in terms of configuration. You can really mix and match everything, but Dell's is pretty darn close. Like you can do a lot with it. But yeah, go check out the review. I don't know who's going to beat this thing. Like I really don't. I know Razer has some stuff coming out, Lenovo too, and we'll see. But man, I go look at the photos. Just look at the photos. It's the coolest looking laptop.
It's a beautiful laptop. It really is.
Yeah, get Alpine whites. Don't get the silver and black. I mean, I guess if you're boring, but here's the problem with the black one. It's the soft touch, so it feels really nice.
Greasy.
But it picks up hand grease like crazy. Yeah. Like after like a day or two, you're just going to notice these like grease marks, and it's just like ugh.
That was my biggest complaint with the original XPS, with the one when they did the redesign originally with the what do they call the thin bezels, like the Ultra something? Infinity Edge. That was it. And because I loved that laptop so much. But yeah, the greasy sort of carbon fiber design they had on it, and the fact that it didn't have Windows Hello were bummers for me.
Yep. And their power button was weird. It was kind of mushy. The new power button is awesome. It's very crisp. It's square. It's just really nice. The Alpine White feels awesome. Feels like linoleum. But you can they did tests. So this is like the third iteration of the Alpine White, and it's this like weird. It's like some kind of glass weave stuff that they use. But I remember them showing how resilient it is. They took a Sharpie marker and drew on the laptop on the deck, and then it just wipes off.
Yeah.
And they even did tests where they left it for like a day or two and still wiped it off. So it's very resilient towards like yellowing or getting dirty, but it just looks better. It doesn't show dust. That's the other problem with black keyboards and like keyboard decks is like, just go take a photo. You'll see just all this yuck that's built up on it. So get the Alpine White. It's $50 extra, but trust me, that's the one you want. And whenever you're out in public and you open this thing, people go like, what the hell is that thing? It's a eye looker. So that's the XPS 13. XPS 15. So as I mentioned at the outset here, this image leaked, and it's probably true. So the reason I say it's probably true is because the XPS 15 also now looks to have been completely redesigned. And, I just told you the XPS 13 was, and the 2-in-1 was, so this makes sense, right? And no surprise, it appears it has a 16:10 display as well, which again, I'm just like, and this makes sense for Dell. It's easier for them to build laptops and have a consistent design language. So not a surprise there. But this also is the Infinity Edge, but it's now Infinity Edge on all four sides. That is, it's all even. So like this display goes right down to the keyboard, and it looks crazy because it just looks like it's a giant display. And you still got the camera on the top and everything like that, so don't worry. But it looks much thinner too. No Type A ports anymore. It looks like just Type C, Thunderbolt 3, probably 3 ports, I'd imagine. It looks like it also has a full SD card reader, which I think would make sense too. But we're not don't know the actual specs. Speaking of, we don't know if it's Intel or AMD. My hunch is Intel. I think Dell is pretty close to Intel. But this is a complete redesign. So if they were going to put AMD in it, this would be the chance to do it. But we have to wait and see. Same with the graphics. We don't know what the graphics are on that. But it just looks like amazing. And if that's not enough, it looks like they're doing the same thing, but in a 17-inch version. Now, this is really, we don't know if this is true, but it's in that image. It's clearly a bigger version of it. And it looks just like the 15, and I think that one may have the full SD card. I may be wrong that, but
so would a 17-inch XPS with the Infinity Edge display be more like a 15-inch laptop? Because that's the comparisons they used to do, right? When the XPS 13 redesign
like
came out,
13s are like 12s, although they're more like 11s almost now. Yep. So and that's like the LG Gram 17 that I have. That is basically the size of what a 15-inch was a few years ago. So It's all coming back down. That's why 17 now sort of makes sense, because between shaving off the bezels and going 16 by 10, this is now a very important, and they can make them really thin. So you get this really thin, and like to have that build quality with the XPS, like that's going to be great. I mean, that's going to be so much. For that. Yeah, that's going to be so much screen. And like LG did a good job. I like LG's, but theirs is just full HD and it's matte. I think it's matte. No, it's a glossy, non-touch. And I don't know what this will be, but this will most likely be, higher resolution, 2K maybe, definitely Sharp-Ig, so I'd imagine.
Hopefully a high refresh rate. That'd be really nice.
We are seeing that, so that's a good point to bring up. I will say 2020, you're going to start to see companies adopting higher refresh rates in the 13-inch, the 13-inch range and all this kind of stuff. So that stuff is coming. The question is with Microsoft if they're going to do it.
I heard that's possible with the next, maybe not with a Surface Pro in the future. I don't know if it'll be the next one, but they were definitely testing it on a Surface Pro. I don't know how high the refresh rate. It might even just be 90, but 90 is better than 60, as we all know. But real quick, going back to the XPS 17, if it is true, obviously with a bigger screen comes a bigger deck, right? Which means a more spacious keyboard, but more importantly, a bigger trackpad. That's what I'm excited about.
It is. That's the beauty of 16 by 10. It's like, I keep telling people, it's not just you get a better display, and it is a better display. I don't care what Rich Wood says. But yeah, because the keyboard has to be taller, you can put in a bigger trackpad. Apple learned this years ago. And so like the XPS 13 now, its trackpad is 17% bigger. That isn't because Dell was like, let's just make it bigger. It was because they literally have more room to make it bigger now. So they could do that. The keyboard is also 9%. The keys are 9% larger, and it made all the difference. That keyboard is now good. I never really loved the XPS 13's keyboard, at least in the last few years, just because HP and Microsoft and Lenovo just kept outdoing them. But this keyboard now is really nice. But yeah, an XPS 17 could be just like, it depends I'm curious how they're going to go for pure power, like this thing has just got some like serious graphics in it, or is it more like what LG did, which is like it's a 17-inch Ultrabook? I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. You could probably buy it. Knowing Dell, they probably will sell a version without like high-end graphics, so it will be like the Ultrabook.
Yeah, like a low starting price, but for basically nothing in it.
So no word on when those are going to come out, but seeing as the renders are kind of floating around, I would imagine probably the next month or two we'll start hearing. Everybody's kind of doing stuff. So, but it's exciting time for laptops, man. There's just so many good ones. I have a new one on the floor. I can't talk about it.
It's on the floor though, so that's
I did show Zach before the podcast. Yes. This one's under embargo.
It's not a Surface, don't worry.
It's a Surface. It's been announced already, but I can't tell. But it's pretty cool. It's interesting. It's got some really nice stuff going on with it. But look forward next review, Asus ROG Zephyrus G14. I should be doing that real soon, as well as this embargoed one. The also just mentioned the Asus ROG was now listed at Best Buy for $1,450. That is ridiculously cheap for that laptop, because that laptop has the Ryzen 9 in it, which basically trounces a Core i9 processor, RTX 2060 graphics, that's some serious graphics, and a 120 hertz refresh display, and a 14-inch compact body. And that thing, I already posted the benchmarks. Go check them out. That thing is one of the fastest, most powerful 14-inch laptops on the planet right now. And for 1450, that's like that's a bargain, man. Like you're going to get a killer gaming laptop uh, for less than $1,500. That's almost unheard of. So it goes to show you the AMD thing is true.
Mm.
So that is that. I'm done talking. Zach, tell us what's new about the Insider build.
Yeah, so this week a new Windows Insider build came out, and for the first time in what feels like forever, this build actually has some noticeable new features in it. So to remind everybody, this is a insider build for Microsoft's active development branch, which essentially just means they're no longer assigning these builds specific code names for specific releases. The features in this build can show up in any release, whether it's the next one or the one after that or the one after that. So we can't really say this is coming in the next update. It's just coming in a future one if Microsoft doesn't decide to pull it. But these changes are in build 19603 here. So if you're a user of the Windows subsystem for Linux, there is now File Explorer integration with the latest build. So if you have that already set up, if you open up File Explorer, you'll see a little Linux category in the sort of File Explorer sidebar with the little penguin, the Linux penguin, which you can now access the Linux file system straight through the Microsoft Windows File Explorer, which is kind of nice. Microsoft is also adding some improvements to storage settings inside the Settings app, just some UI tweaks and stuff, and a more granular control over things it's able to clear up and stuff, because there's now clear up recommendations. So let me read this real quick here. Free up disk space with this storage settings feature that gathers up unused files and apps so you can digitally cleanse your device even. Windows cannot predict whether you want to delete personal files, uninstall apps, or remove local copies of files synced to the cloud. With this tool, all of the contents is gathered in one page and removable by you with a few clicks. So that's kind of nice. Microsoft also formally announced the Microsoft News Bar, which is a thing that sort of leaked a week or so ago. Essentially, this is an app you can download in the Microsoft Store. I believe it's a Win32 program. I'd be surprised if it's not.
Yes.
But yes. What it does is essentially puts the old school Windows Vista sidebar onto your desktop, and instead of it being all gadgets, it's just all news. So for Microsoft News, a bunch of thumbnails of the latest news, likely these days full of coronavirus news. But yeah, if you're somebody who wants to keep an eye on the news all the time, you can install this and have the news straight on your desktop. You can also make it add like a news ticker along the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen. Kind of nice. Again, this isn't specific to the actual build. They've just mentioned it in the changelog here for some reason. And that's basically it for all the big stuff. A bunch of fixes in this and stuff as well. And also I noticed, which isn't in the blog post, but I'll mention it here. And I'm assuming this is an A/B test, but if you open up the settings, the search UI, and you don't have the new Edge installed, there'll be a banner in there. It says recommended, download the new Microsoft Edge, and there's a download button for you to go and download it. It takes you to microsoftedge.com, where you can download the installer. I'm sure people will shout about this being an advert, but honestly, I don't care. It's upsell of Microsoft's own first-party products, which I'm totally fine with. And the new Microsoft Edge is better than the old one, so I think it's okay. Also not in the actual changelog, but worth noting, are some features that are hidden in this build. The first of which is the new music control UI. Now, we've talked about this before. This showed up, I want to say, a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now, in an insider build. And essentially, it's like when you click on the volume icon, it has this sort of volume up and down slider. But also above it, you now have music controls. So you see your little album art plus play, pause, and skip. Which is nice. That is finally, I guess, coming to a desktop build very soon. It's essentially the same UI as what's in 10X, just ported to Windows 10, which I think we're going to see a lot more of over the next couple of years. And there was something else as well. Oh, yes, in the settings app, Microsoft is building out a what's new area. So a lot of one big complaint with Windows is that whenever they introduce new features or changes, they're very hard to discover by new or existing users who have just updated, those who aren't, tech savvy or following along the development of Windows. When a new feature update comes out, there's not really a lot to tell that user what's actually new in this update. Now in the settings app, or eventually in the settings app, there'll be a dedicated area that has a whole bunch of blocks of just features that are new, and you can click on it to find and learn more and stuff, which should help out with discoverability of features and all of that good stuff. So that's basically it for the build, the latest Insider build. We're finally starting to see some changes, which is good to see. Regarding the the status of the 20H1 release, which still doesn't have a name. It's version 2004. Some people thought it'd be called the April 2020 update. That's what I thought it was going to be called. But then it didn't come out. It's too late now to call it the April update, even though it's only the beginning of April. This is more likely going to be called the May update now, assuming Microsoft can, in the next couple of weeks, put out an announcement that says, hey, here's what we're doing with 20H1. It still needs to go to release preview first, and I think that's when they'll make the announcement about its name and when they expect to start rolling it out. And I expect that will happen this month. Microsoft is talking about getting that done. I don't know why it's not happened yet. I can't think of a reason why it hasn't, but it still hasn't, so who knows. I know why it hasn't rolled out to the public, and that's because this pandemic has it makes it more difficult to roll out a brand new version of Windows, but more importantly, Microsoft doesn't want to throw a new version of Windows onto people when they are relying on their computers more than ever, because an update could break something and that would just look bad. So they're not rolling it out right now, which makes sense. But I think it will be made available to seekers sooner. So if you are somebody who is a little bit tech savvy and it doesn't mind risking downloading a new update, you will be able to do that at some point very soon. But yeah, it's still not out yet, and I do not expect it to be air quotes GA until at least next month.
I just want to quickly talk about the Microsoft News app, because if people are having a funny discussion, like Microsoft News might be biased. You don't want Microsoft controlling your news sources. So it sounds like you never actually use Microsoft News, because for one, it actually does bring in news from everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the source, actually. There's actually also the ability to, under a tab, you can do a thing called My Sources. Like you can literally go pick where you want to get your news from and add in sources that you prefer. For instance, as when I did political science in college, we were actually required to subscribe to the Christian Science Monitor because it's considered to be one of the most established, unbiased political papers around for politics. And so I could just subscribe to Christian Science Monitor and have that show up in my feed. So there's no bias here with Microsoft. It's not just all the news comes from original sources, whether it's CNN, it's Fox, it's MSNBC, and you can actually hide sources. So you can actually live in your bubble if you want to. But it's a very configurable app, and they've actually done a nice job, and they're adding more features to it, including if you want to hide certain things that don't, see stuff. But you can they have a good news section. It's just a tab. It's awesome. It's just good, happy news if you don't want to read about depressing stuff. If you want to follow, say, Star Wars, you can type in Star Wars as a topic. It'll give you just Star Wars news, all organized under tab. You can do that. I do it for UFC. I just follow UFC news, Star Wars, Windows stuff. So you can actually configure this app. It's a general news service, not a specific Microsoft news thing. And this idea of being biased and all this, you decide. Go try it out and see it. But I don't know. I think this is a really weak argument as to why it's a Win32 application versus, I don't know what people were expecting, maybe ARM64. You can absolutely install this on your laptop. Don't get me wrong. And it looks great. In one of the photos, I have it on XPS 13. I will say this is probably not an app that most people are going to want to run on a laptop. For one, laptops usually go in and out. You're doing work and stuff like that. You have very little screen real estate. I don't know many people have 13-inch laptops going, I wish I could fill in some of this space on this display with something. So while you can do it on a laptop, I'm going to say this is mostly geared for desktop usage when you're stationary.
Multiple screens, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, it has support in it for multiple screens. It's actually under an option, so it can default to one of your multiple displays. So if you're running 2 or even 3 displays, you can have this in it. And it makes sense because then you can have tickers and a bunch of stuff going on. But if you just have a single display and it's small, you're probably not going to do it. So, yeah, part of me is like, oh my God, I did do an ARM64 version. But then again, I'm thinking am I really going to run this on the Pro X? It's not like it runs for free. I mean, it's going to use graphic power on it, right? It does use GPU because it's beautiful. It actually slides around and shuffles, and it's really cool. It's downloading images, and it's going to use some CPU cycles. And I think a lot of people are going to be like, battery life or run a frivolous thing that I don't really need. So that's why Win32 does make sense for this. I think that
Win32, I think you mean x86, right?
Yeah, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
x86, but
Some
not
on the
ARM64.
subject, someone is asking why is it a Win32 program and not a UWP? The reason is the API set for this to function as
Right.
like a desktop gadget that sort of sits in the desktop. UWP can't do that, so it has to be
Yep.
a Win30. It's an old school, like the old gadgets. It's all old school, but it's got a
Yeah.
nice modern lick of paint, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, it looks super nice, but
Yeah.
it absolutely goes back to the late 1990s when we
Oh, for
would run
sure.
these kind
Yeah.
of things. I used to have the tickers on my computer and all that kind of stuff, but UWP doesn't have the tools and
Right.
graphic tools, as far as I know, to actually make this happen. It just
Hmm.
because there was no instance of a UWP app running as like a gadget or a ticker on your PC. But Win32 is very flexible. You can basically hack in anything, so
Hmm.
that's
That's
why.
right. Shall we get on with the big news of this week?
Oh, sure.
This is. I want to say this is a surprise, but it's not really. We've kind of sort of been assuming this would happen. So, Mary Jo Foley this week wrote a report full of bad news, more or less, if you're a fan of Windows 10X. Essentially, Windows 10X will not be ready this year. Microsoft sent out a memo to some employees, I don't think everybody got it, earlier this week, which essentially said, yeah, we're delaying Windows 10X and the Surface Neo. So that means that the Surface Neo is also, the hardware will not be coming holiday 2020, as originally announced. It will likely be coming later than that, sometime in 2021. This hasn't been announced officially yet. Microsoft hasn't put out any statement or press release or let any media know, I don't think. So this is still technically rumor territory, but I can confirm via my own sourcing that Windows 10X has in fact been delayed. And there's been talk of this for quite a while. I asked Microsoft back in February when they did the developer day whether Windows 10X was still on track for holiday 2020, and they were like, yeah, but the wording, I can't remember the exact wording, I don't think I'm allowed to say it anyway, but they were like, yes, but the way they said yes was kind of not very reassuring. So it does sound like it's going to be delayed here. Delayed to when is the question? I don't know. The next sort of earliest milestone, I think, is spring 2021. So my guess would be they're going to try and finalize it with 21H1, which is supposed to actually have in December, and then they can push that out sometime in the spring. But who knows? Like this is all in flux, as are updates internally all the time. The biggest news, of course, is the Surface Neo won't be launching this year, which I think a lot of people will be upset about. But this is interesting because this ties into the other news that went with this, which is Microsoft is no longer prioritizing Windows 10X for dual screens. When they announced Windows 10X back in October, weirdly, they announced it as an operating system exclusive to dual screen PCs and foldables, which sort of surprised us, sort of in the know with Windows 10. At the time, we were talking about it as Windows Lite or Santorini, and we knew that this was an operating system Microsoft was building from the ground up for, laptops and tablets to compete with the Chromebook market, as well as this sort of premium dual screen foldable market, which was up and coming. So when they announced 10X as an exclusive operating system for foldables, that was weird to us. Why are they doing this? That makes no sense. But now they've decided to not do that and are instead going to prioritize Windows 10X for single screen and sort of traditional form factors instead, which is what they should have done all along. It should never have been exclusive to foldables, in my opinion. I know why they did it. We've talked about this before. It's because they don't want to scare people. They want to set expectations and all that other stuff, blah. But I would prefer testing Windows 10X on my Surface Go than on a Surface Neo that costs $2,000. So this does appear to be part of that. The reason why the Surface Neo isn't coming in at the end of this year is because Windows 10X is now being prioritized for single screen devices as well. This doesn't mean dual screens are cancelled. They're still going to happen, just a bit later than originally planned, which is fine because I think there was only a few dual screens scheduled for this year anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the idea of 10x. I think as it came out, more people saw it in action. Your walkthrough videos.
Yeah.
People saw it being hacked onto single screen devices, including Surface Go, and seeing how well it runs on those because it is faster, it's smoother, it's completely modern, and I think with the emulator out there too. I think Microsoft might have been like, hey, people seem to be really into this and wanting this. And
I
there's this
can't
whole,
imagine they were surprised by this.
yeah, I know. It is weird because like we did mention going with dual screen devices first. this precedent and expectation of like you have to buy new hardware, it's a new experience, it's all new, and it's going to drive that. But you can make the counter argument, and it could go the other way. There's also this idea that Panos is now in charge of Windows 10, the consumer stuff at least, not the core Azure aspect of it, but in terms of what Windows 10 is, all that, and he may have had a role in this in terms of like, hey, there's a lot of people want this. It does make sense to see it on something like a Surface Go at some point, or even maybe I don't know if they would do it on a Surface Pro. Maybe that it gets into that whole debate, like what's a Pro? But then again, Microsoft did Surface Pro used to come with Windows 10 Pro. Now it comes with Windows 10 Home. And I always roll my eyes at this because I don't care. But I know some people need the features in Pro, but most consumers do not. And this is a way to cut down the price because Surface Pros became $100 cheaper once they did that. Because yes, Microsoft does need to license to themselves their own operating system. But still, 10x on like a new device. Now, I know a lot of people said it would make sense also on a Surface Pro X. And while everybody agrees with that, it doesn't have ARM support as of now. And that's because that's a whole layer cake of emulation and like that because you have Win32 as a subsystem abstracted now needs to also emulate for ARM. Like that's just like a lot of stuff. As far as Zach has heard, that's still they will do that eventually, but it's not like the immediate priority. Maybe that'll change now. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea of like, and there's also that question of the Neo's hardware in terms of, I don't think the bezels matter much on the Neo. I know a lot of people like to bring that up.
Yeah.
But that's also where they have the magnets being hidden. And if you go back and watch like the physical keyboard that it has, which sticks to the back, it literally flips around. It's magic. Like it's the amount of like magnet tech they've used is just insane. Because this thing, it's on the back of the device, but with one finger you just flip it and it just flips around to the display and it sticks and it's in place, and you can start using the keyboard, and then you can slide it up and get the trackpad. Like you need strong magnets to do that. And last I checked, it's kind of hard to put strong magnets behind the display. Maybe they can do it. I'm not an engineer, but that's why you have bezels, and you can also hide stuff like the antennas and everything in that bezel too, or do things like bigger battery life, right? So I'm not really too concerned about them like having to redesign the Neo or anything like that. But maybe there could be smaller hardware tweaks. There's also, we don't know with Intel's Lakefield, the status of that, and because that's shipping with this device too. So there's that. Lakefield may technically be available, but maybe not in the production levels they need it to. So there's a lot of stuff. There's the COVID-19 definitely plays a role here, just because I imagine remote creating and managing a new operating system is got to be difficult. And we know this is a fact because forgetting Microsoft, a ton of video games have been delayed too and have had their dates pushed back. So while remote work can be done and certain things, it is a loss of productivity for these companies who are adjusting to this process. So I think there's a lot of issues going on here that none of it, I don't want to listen, if you're disappointed, be disappointed. I understand it, but I think we should allow them a little bit of slack here.
I've always said if Microsoft needs to delay 10x, they should, because first impressions matter with this more than ever before. If Microsoft wants this to succeed, the first impression needs to be better than great. Because we can't have another Windows RT, Windows 10s scenario. This has to be good right out the gate. This has to catch people's eye. The media has to see it and go, oh, actually, they're onto something here. This is great. It can't launch and media go, okay, so it does this well, but this and this done poorly. We're gonna have to wait and see how this rolls, because then it's dead. It can't be like that. It has to be great on day one. So if they need to delay it, then so be it. That's fine. With that said, even if this pandemic didn't happen, I still feel like they would have delayed it regardless. I've heard internally there's quite a few problems that Microsoft is having with Windows 10X around specifically the emulation, which is not a surprise. The virtualization of the Win32 programs. Most Windows programs are still Win32 programs, most third-party ones. And to get them to run on Windows 10X, you are essentially spinning up a legacy version of Windows 10 in the background to do that, and then remote desktoping into that virtual desktop, virtualized legacy version of Windows 10 to get that desktop placed on the modern OS, which is Windows 10X. That's a complicated way to do things, and because you're remote desktoping in, Win32 programs can only see the legacy OS. So if you're using a program like Teams, for example, and trying to share your desktop, it only sees it doesn't see what you're actually running on Windows 10X. That's a big problem. And it's stuff like this that Microsoft needs to figure out, whether it's the Windows side or the Office side, how to get around that problem. Whether the Windows side allows the VM or whatever, the container, to be a little bit more free and allow access to the Windows 10X a little bit more, or if it's the Office team who just builds a UWP, which is what they should have done in the beginning. But let's not get into that argument today. So yeah, there's a lot of compatibility and performance questions around Windows 10X, especially with the Win32 program, which I think they need to address before they start shipping Windows 10X. But the refocus on single screens, I think, is the most interesting part here, because this is going back to the original idea of this will compete with Chromebooks, and I think that's a good idea. Launching a category of devices that will cost $2,000 and up during a pandemic or just after a pandemic, hopefully, assuming later this year the pandemic has sort of calmed down a bit, would be suicide. No one's buying those PCs, especially since it's a new form factor, it's untested. Nobody knows if they need to fit it into their workflow. Nobody's going to be risking that much money on a new form factor like that. They'd much rather buy something they know and like, whether it's a $400 Surface Go 2 or 3 or whatever, all the way up to like $1,000 Ultrabook or whatever. Those that's the safe bet. And if Microsoft wants Windows 10X to start picking up sooner rather than later, then they need to start taking advantage of those form factors as well. Which, again, it was always going to be the plan anyway. It's just no longer exclusive to the dual screen market. It's now coming to the more traditional laptops, which is good. Brad Sams mentioned that he's hearing that perhaps at Build, Microsoft will release preview builds for existing devices. Now, I don't know how that would work. I totally believe it's possible. In fact, I know it's possible, but I don't know if it will be. I don't know how they will deliver it in the form of an ISO. I don't think it'll be like that, and I don't think it'll be every device that has access to this. I think it'll be a specific list of supported devices.
Oh, of course.
And if you want to install it, you have to download a program to flash Windows 10X onto it, because that's how they do it internally at Microsoft. Of course, engineers have been testing Windows 10X on the Surface Go, the Surface Pro 5, 6, 7, all of that. But they have to use a special program to flash pre-made FFUs with Windows 10X and the drivers pre-installed onto those devices, because Windows 10X isn't an OS that can just be installed through ISO media. I assume
they
will
would be
have to...
stupid not to do this.
Right, I agree.
There is this question of the technical feasibility of it, which is not a problem for you and I to solve, and it's a legit thing for them to solve.
Yeah.
But there's so much benefit for them in doing that. And it's fine if it's unrestricted devices. Heck, your phone, when it came out, and still is restricted to certain devices, that's totally fine. Imagine a Surface Go, which is actually now running out of supply, by the way, because we expect a Go 2 to be coming out anytime soon. But imagine if you could repurpose your existing Go to run 10X on it. First of all, fan service. Like, a lot of people and developers would absolutely love that ability just to do that. The other thing is it's going to help the development story of Windows 10X, because people are going to have this operating system to run. And it's true that UWP and PWA apps are still the primary dev story behind 10X. Yeah, it can run Win32, but it's a fallback system. And so it could help spur, Microsoft's push to, again, have more modern, not just UWP, but all its, modern app design paradigms used for this. And it would just generate interest. It would gain feedback on bugs and features, just like the Insider program would. And they could refine stuff. So then when it does launch with something even like the Neo, which is, still going to have differences, the core of it, the polish of it will be much better.
Yeah. And it's important for Microsoft to test on real hardware as well, because the emulator's all fine, but the emulator's designed for developers to test their apps. It's not really designed to test the OS and its performance, because in an emulator, performance is going to be worse anyway. running it on actual hardware will allow people like me and Dan to actually sit down with a device and use Windows 10X, actually use it in our workflows and test things like the Win32 emulation, which is super important. And Microsoft needs that feedback, and they're not getting that from they're not getting any useful feedback rather from people who are testing it in the emulator, because the emulator is going to be slow. So the Win32 programs are going to feel slow, and I assume anybody who has submitted feedback about the Win32 emulation via the emulator saying it's slow, Microsoft knows that it's an emulator. It's not really helpful. Once we get this on actual hardware and we can actually test it on something like a Surface Go or a Surface Pro or even a Surface laptop or book, then we can actually start getting real numbers, real testing, real all of that done properly. And Microsoft can actually start using that information, and it will hopefully make the product better. But yeah, so we'll have to see in the next few weeks what turns out, how this comes about. Microsoft, as I said, hasn't announced this publicly. They might announce it at the Surface event, although I mean, yeah, they could do that if they are deciding, if they are still planning to do an actual event that they will live stream. They could have a moment where they're like, so here's 10x, here's what we said last year, here's what's changing. Or they might wait till build, which I think makes more sense for the software side of things. At least they might announce that Neo isn't coming this year at the event, the hardware event, which makes sense. Although, because I bet, how will they spin that news? I bet they'll try and spin it in a positive light. I think they might actually just announce it in a blog post. Or even a tweet, like the Surface earbuds.
Yeah, like the Surface earbuds. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, the getting back to 10x and Chromebooks, the real argument there is, of course, education market. 10x makes a ton of sense for the education market, and a lot of people like to tease about Windows 10s, but we've said from day one that 10s was a band-aid. 10s is merely a way to lock down Windows 10 so that education systems and some enterprise can have a lockdown, more controlled version of 10 that doesn't allow you just to install executable apps and willy-nilly stuff from the internet. Because this is both the strength of Windows 10 and its weakness. Yep. The strength is you have nerds who just go install things and change their cursors and install little widgets, and that's Windows. You can run stuff from 30 years ago on your computer. You can install viruses. You can do BitTorrents. You can do all this, and that's why Windows is so powerful. The downside is that's also its weakness. Anyone who has a grandfather who uses Windows 10 will know this. If you ever have people who have to constantly fix their computers because they clicked a link in their email and installed thank God we don't have browser helper objects anymore, but what I'm saying here, 10x, so that was 10s. That was the purpose of 10s. 10s is never really meant to be this long-term solution to fix Windows. It was meant to buy them time, because at the same time, Microsoft was making an aggressive push into the education market, and it's working. They're making a lot of progress, especially in the United States, against Google. Now, Google still has a better solution, and 10x is going to be that answer. So if they're looking to really, take the fight to to schools, putting 10x on single screen devices sooner than later is going to benefit them for that market. And so that could have also, played a huge role in this. And I think it's a smart decision. 10s will eventually fade into the background. I'll also say, you've heard internally this too, that the biggest reason why people switched out of 10s wasn't because of some stupid other app. It was because of Chrome. It was a Chrome browser. That was it. People just needed that Chrome browser. Well, what's changed between when 10s was first announced and came out and now? It's the new Microsoft Edge browser, which is seeing a lot of momentum and everything like that. And it solves a lot of this problem. Not everything, I mentioned in the past, getting people to switch from browsers is a hard thing to do. But Microsoft is in a better position to make the sell this time than they were last time by going, well, you can just use our existing Edge. And people are like, oh, but it sucks. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts here, that's for sure. But I like to see 10x, especially for the education system, because that will be the true Chromebook competitor, because it's basically like Chrome OS, but way better, because you can install Win32 applications and run 32 stuff if you need to.
And I think we've said this before, and I know Microsoft doesn't really want us saying this, but it's kind of true. The Win32 support on 10x is there for fallback purposes. If you're somebody who runs 100% of the time Win32 programs, don't buy a Windows 10X device. This isn't the platform for you. This is for people who browse the web, check their emails, watch Netflix, consumption-based platform, more or less. Obviously, it will do Office and stuff as well, but it's not really going to be a platform for editing high-quality video or doing huge, big edits in Photoshop and stuff, or rendering 3D models in CAD and whatever. This isn't the platform for that. This is, and I know this comparison sort of no longer makes sense since Apple's really trying to make iPadOS a desktop-class operating system, but Windows 10X is the iOS of Microsoft's world. Windows 10 today, the legacy Windows 10 is the Mac OS. It's like the two different categories of people doing the two different things. That's how this is going to play out for Windows 10 and Windows 10X. So yeah, the next few weeks to months are going to be very interesting for Microsoft's narrative when it comes to Windows 10X. I hope they were just honest and to say, yeah, it's not just dual screens no more, and it's coming later because it needs more time to bake. And that's fine. Honesty is the best policy. I don't want them to try and spin this as some kind of amazing positive, it was in our plan all along, which is what they'll probably try to do, and we'll be there to call them on their bull. Their bull. So sure. That's fun. Surface Duo camera samples. So along the lines of hardware, Panos Panay posted a photo this week to his Instagram. He keeps posting things to Instagram that's making news. Don't know why he chooses Instagram for that, but he posted the first confirmed camera sample from a Surface Duo. It's a photo of his son, I believe, in front of a fireplace, and it sort of gives us an idea of the quality. Of course, this has been uploaded to Instagram, so Instagram has compressed it and whatever else, but we've been saying for a while the Surface Duo's camera is not going to be amazing, and I think this photo confirms that. Don't you agree, Daniel?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's basically it. People did see this and like, oh yeah, here we go. But yeah, this is going to be a mediocre to okay camera. It's not going to blow anyone's socks off. It's not going to be competing with the iPhone or Pixel or Google or anything else because, well, this is Microsoft's first sort of go at a camera, which is not true. They did the Lumia 950, although technically Nokia did that. So, yeah, this is gonna be a slow burn. I think we won't see a good camera in a Surface Duo for at least a couple of generations.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just arguing against people here.
Stop arguing.
Yeah, this camera, we said before, it's not going to be great. There's multiple reasons there, and it's not for. Okay, maybe they could have put like more camera hardware in there. In fact, they did have more camera hardware in there at some point, but it detracted from the overall design aesthetic that they're going for. True. And there's been photos of this device that are coming out from people using it, and I implore you to go look at them because, as I said from the first time I held it, this thing is stupid thin. It's thinner than you think it is. When it's closed, it's as thin as like an iPhone or slightly thinner, which is crazy because it opens up and it's two displays. So the design aesthetic that they were going for didn't warrant them having a giant camera hump on the back. And then there's also this issue with when they switched to glass, and there are problems with some of the designs there. That said, just throwing hardware at this thing doesn't give you a good camera. Just look at LG or any other camera company. The only ones doing good cameras today are Samsung and Huawei and Apple. That's it.
And Google.
Those are the three. And Google, sorry. Those are the only ones that are doing good camera. Everybody else does okay cameras. And I say that with like OnePlus, and I love OnePlus. Their cameras are okay. Yeah. But they're never going to be able to catch up because it requires a ton of money and research and years of practice. And even Samsung switched sensors, and all the hype around the S20 series. Go read a lot of the reviews coming out around it. A lot of people don't like the new cameras. They haven't tuned their algorithms to the point that it matches the quality of the sensor that they have in those devices. So the S20s have almost taken sort of a slight hit in performance in terms of camera quality. Meanwhile, Apple, I've said, once they hit the iPhone 11, actually became really good cameras. So they can't just will this thing to make it happen. It will take a couple of generations. It will take a lot of money. It will take a lot of algorithms to get there. And you're not going to get that in a version 1 product. Now, that sample we saw, it's okay. I have a hard time judging the photo. For one, it's on Instagram, so you're going to get some compression and all this kind of stuff. The other thing, it's taken in the ideal situation. You got sunlight coming in, brightly lit room, a subject who's not moving. Hard to screw that photo up, even on any kind of $300 phone, right? So that doesn't really tell you much. How it snaps photos of like your dog or kid running around the room, or when you're sitting at dinner at nighttime at a restaurant. this is going to be, or panoramic, like all these will be the real test. And I'm already just going to tell you, there's no way you're going to be impressed by it. I'd be shocked. And I know I've said maybe they've hooked up with Google and Google will give them some of their algorithms, but I didn't even think that was true. And I still don't think that's true. It would be nice, but I don't know why Google would do that. They haven't done that with any OEMs.
They have their own phones.
Yeah. So like, why would they? So yeah. I get, like 90% of our audience in the poll either thought it was meh or pretty good, and you're wrong. So, I mean, the photo was meh. So that's kind of accurate, but that's like in the ideal lighting situation. I think this camera I think when the reviews come out, you're going to see all the reviews hammer it for the camera, for not having Qi, for not having NFC. Hopefully not the price. The price may be actually the saving grace here due to it not having a lot of that high-end stuff and using last year's processor. So that may actually help it. But it's more about the concept of the device. Still, when I saw Brad Anderson, corporate vice president, Office or Microsoft 365 at Microsoft, there's a photo of him just like with his kids and he's using it. And
he's been showing off a lot recently.
Yeah. And he's just in his like backyard, like laying out in the sun. He's just holding it. But it looks cool because it is. It's like a little book that you hold. And for consuming information and creating stuff, that is typing and sending off information, I think it's still going to do something that we don't have the ability to do on a lot of current phones. And that's the selling point. So it's about that overall concept. That doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. And there's no way it's going to be perfect on version 1. But they need to get this out. They need to get out ASAP so they can already start working on version 2, which will give us thinner bezels, better camera, 5G. It'll have all that stuff, as well as get some feedback and software and everything like that. So, because they can't, you made the argument a few weeks ago, they got to get this out before the fall, because the fall is going to start to see a lot of 5G phones starting to hit, which means you're all going to get coronavirus, by the way. By the way, if you believe that,
stop listening.
Please unsubscribe from our podcast. Don't ever talk to me on Twitter, because I have no respect for you and I will mock you. So they need to get it out there, because it's going to be very tough to sell kind of a high-end phone, premium priced phone in late 2020. It doesn't have 5G when everybody else is putting those devices out
with an 855 inside. Just keep them.
Yeah, I feel like that's a little bit of a less concern.
Sure,
but
I agree,
but for regular people, but you're right in the terms of the tech press will hammer that, because to them that's the tech press loves to hammer on processor chips and megapixel counting for photos and pixel peeping, because that's all they got these days. It's all you can really review a phone on, or whether it slides off the table. I don't know. I'm still super excited about this, because it's still, like I said, the form factor, the experience is completely different. I'm not saying it's going to be amazing. I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy it, but I'm very excited about trying it. I love this idea of having dual screens and working that way.
I honestly think the dual screen form factor makes more sense on the phone than it does the PC. I think the PC makes more sense as a single screen foldable, and I think that the phone makes more sense as a dual screen foldable. And that goes with the Galaxy Fold as well. I think it would have made more sense with 2 screens instead of 1. And I think the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Fold is a better idea than the Surface Neo. That's just my personal thoughts. And I know not everybody agrees with that. That's fine. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Surface Duo sticks to the 2 screen, and the Surface Neo with Gen 2 or maybe Gen 3 or whatever, that eventually morphs into a single screen form factor.
Yeah, there's I've said before with the pros and cons, and Mr. Mobile there, Michael Fisher, did a great video recently talking about the different designs out there. Dual screen I think is still cheaper to make, but it's probably just a carryover until we get actual dual screen, or single foldable that's cheaper and more resilient. It's gonna be an interesting category. I have to admit the dual screen PC thing is a lot more up in the air. It's going to depend how that keyboard experience is and carrying it around. I don't know. It's completely. I've never worked that way. Of course, I said the same thing with Surface Pros, and those took a couple of years. I've told the story over and over again. I always thought Surface Pro was cool, but it wasn't until around Surface Pro 5 that I really started enjoying the form factor. Now I prefer it. That's why someone was asking me recently about, should you get a convertible laptop like the XPS 13 2-in-1 or Spectre? or or just a regular laptop. I'm like, well, if I still kind of feel strongly if you want a convertible 2-in-1, go for the Surface Pro design. I like that personally more. I like that idea of a convertible being like that versus a convertible laptop. Convertible laptops are cool. And what's nice about them is there's almost no trade-offs anymore. Like, for instance, the XPS 13 2-in-1 and the XPS 13 basically have the same hardware inside, and they perform basically the same. Like, you couldn't do that a couple of years ago. Like, there was no way to do it. The 2-in-1s always had worse processor performance, louder fans, just a lot more restrictions on the hardware or battery life. Now they're basically identical. In fact, it was funny, about 2 weeks ago, I showed the XPS 13 and I was like, oh, here it is and all that. That was the 2-in-1. I didn't even know. I grabbed it because it's so similar that I accidentally grabbed the wrong one. And so that's what's cool about the convertibles today is there's basically just a price trade-off. But I still like the tablet design. But yeah, I don't know how these dual screen laptops are going to be, or even the foldable ones like Lenovo. I don't know what it's going to be like to use. I may love it. I may hate it. I may think it's gimmicky, or maybe like I really enjoy it. I don't know.
And we won't know until we have them and are using them in our daily lives. Which is why I'm excited for the Duo, because the Duo is coming quite soon. I think Microsoft might use the early Duo launch as a way to bury the bad news, that is the 10X Neo delay. Oh, the 10X, the Surface Neo is delayed. But guess what? You can buy the Surface Duo today. And everyone goes, oh, yeah, great. And then they don't even think about the Surface Neo anymore. It is weird. It does feel like, and I don't know why I get this impression, but it does feel like Microsoft cares more about the Duo than the Neo.
I don't think that's true.
I don't think it's true either, but I get that impression. I don't know why.
No, I'll tell you why. It's just because Duo is imminent.
Yeah,
it's about to come out.
Yeah.
You're seeing photos of people using it. You're seeing the,
yes, right,
Panos posted photos. Neo, we've almost heard nothing of it since Panos showed it on stage. He was at that London event, had it, but we haven't really heard much, except for 10X in the emulator, but we haven't really heard much about that. That's all. It's just, we're just getting more stories on Duo. But I also say phones are, there are more phones sold every year than laptops.
Yeah, I mean, I'd argue they're more personal devices than PCs are.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. The first thing you want to grab in the morning would be a Duo, not your Neo, probably.
And we should probably explain the reason we are seeing the Duo in photos and stuff more than the Neo is because, like I said, Dan said, the Duo is ready to go, but also the Neo really isn't. So there's no reason to be seeing that out to employees to test. They know it's not ready.
Right.
They don't need feedback on that yet. So that's still sort of in the surface in engineering labs and maybe some 10X dev labs, but it's not being seeded to employees just to test. Like the Surface Duo, you're seeing it in the hands of all kinds of employees, some of which are working on the Surface Duo, some of which aren't, and that's just because they're dogfooding it at this point because it's almost ready. The Surface Neo isn't at that point, which is why you're not seeing it in photos and videos and stuff.
Part of me also thinks when I do try the Neo, I'm just going to have this like Westworld moment, and I think there's something to be said about technology that just looks cool and it's enticing.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that with the Pro X. Like one thing I love about the Pro X is it's so much screen, so thin bezels, and just the design is just really good. Or the XPS 13, the new one, is just like you just want to look at it and just use it, right? And I feel like the Neo is going to have a little bit of this biasness towards it, where I'm going to want to use it because I think seeing two high resolution, high contrast, sharp displays in that form factor, I think you're just going to look at it and be like, this thing is wild looking. It's good glass backs. I've held the Neo and opened it up, and it's just like two sheets of glass and metal. It just feels like this super premium, crazy device that you've never experienced before. And I feel like it's going to partially sway me in my review for it. Cause it's going to be like, it's just so cool. So I'll have to make sure to try to separate that from its actual usefulness, functionality, trade-off with price.
Before we wrap up, do you want to do a quick rundown of what we're expecting at this hardware event, which hasn't been announced yet?
I guess Surface Go 2 definitely seems like a go, and the fact that Microsoft has basically run out of selling those is probably a good thing. Big question for me: I'm okay if they kept the form factor the same. In fact, I'm totally expecting that form factor to be the same. I'm hoping they made the bezel slightly thinner.
Yeah.
That's what I'm really hoping for. Now, it doesn't have to be huge, but just shave off a little bit so I can get a little bit bigger display. I still think it's going to be limited with the Intel chips, but it could be interesting. Service Book 3, and surprisingly, not a lot of rumors around this besides we're just expecting internal hardware refreshes, which is kind of boring. It's going to be faster, newer chips. Maybe AMD, that could be interesting because then it could really bring a performance boost. But yeah, I think the story with Service Book 3, unfortunately, is just going to be like, it's faster. And okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I think we're expecting the 1650 Max Q, was it? I can't remember the rumor now. Yeah, that's the GPU, which some people are okay with. Other people were quite disappointed with that news.
Yeah, with RTX out there.
Yeah.
RTX does some cool stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. Service Book 3, I would love for them to actually have done something more radical with Service Book 3.
I agree.
And maybe they did. We're just not haven't heard that yet. But who knows? I mean, this is the same group that surprises us every time.
I'd like to see the Surface Book adopt the 360-degree hinge rather than the detachable.
Sure.
And I know people say, yeah, but the detach is the design because you can use it as like an actual tablet without a keyboard and stuff. Whatever. No one cares. Just make it a 360-degree hinge if you really want that form factor.
Besides that, earbuds definitely go.
Yep.
Those are out and about too now, being tested by Microsoft employees. So white and black versions, or I should say dark gray. I still think these things look awesome. I threw it out there on Twitter the other day. There's no way anyone will ever convince me that Apple AirPods look better.
They don't. You're right. They don't. And we're not saying this because we like Microsoft and stuff. Genuinely, the Surface AirPods look better. They just do. And I know when they were first announced, people were like, God, they look terrible. And I was like, are you kidding me? And the AirPods don't? What?
Right. And so, and the funny thing about the AirPods is this, and I'm 100% certain, no one thinks AirPods look good. No one. And if you say that you think they're okay, you're lying to yourself. They look stupid. But, and this is to Apple's credit, people don't use, and I know people can be like, oh, it's eye cheap. I'm not going there. The reason why AirPods are popular is because they work well. They do what they're supposed to do very well. They get good battery life. They have a cool little charger case.
They work like magic.
That fits in that little coin pocket under your jeans. They pair well. People love the functionality of it, despite how stupid they look, which goes to tell you, and this is a lesson that I know the Surface team learns constantly. The way something looks is easy to criticize or, go after, but it's really about what it does. And if it does what it's supposed to do and does it well, people will use it. Things like the Zune, I thought looked super cool, especially the Zune HD, but many would argue it wasn't doing anything necessarily better than what Apple's iPod was doing at the time. And plus it was doing it kind of late as that market was starting to go down. But and that's why Surface Pro did catch on eventually, because it did what it was supposed to do and it did it well. So now that's the question with the earbuds. And I'm not saying it does, but the thing with the earbuds, it's supposed to get 8 hours of battery life. That circle is supposed to be about touch gestures. You touch them and, there's no buttons to press up and down. They're just finger gestures, which would be really nice. So you need a nice smooth surface to make that happen. And yeah, exactly. And they're supposed to be worn all day, like for those 8 hours. I don't mean like 8 hours battery life, but you use them 4 times because your ears get sore. Like you're supposed to be able to put these in for 8 hours and just wear them. And you can hear other people come up to you, so you don't need to take them out. And, sorry, what was that? You just leave them in, and you can take your calls and use your whatever. Whether they do all that well remains to be seen, but that's their sell on this kind of thing. And I'm actually excited about them. I know a lot of people also excited about the Samsung earbuds. I haven't tried those, and I know they get a lot of favorable reviews too.
Yeah, so. I've got the Galaxy Buds 2 here because they came with my S20 for free. I really like these. These are really nice. They're very easy to set up and just get going. If the Surface Buds are anything like this, I'll be happy. And
it's going to come down to the price. These were announced at $250, which I think a lot of people, myself included, think that's a little bit on the high end.
I agree. They should announce that they're now $199.
I agree. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. It depends on if they can.
Some more
But
good news to bury the bad news.
yeah, we're not 100% certain yet why they've been delayed for this long. If it was just production issues, if there were software
I think
things,
it was the software,
or they
the app.
decided, or yeah, or there's something with, the competition ramped up pretty quickly, right? Because they
True.
announced those AirPod Pros came out, the Samsung Galaxy Buds came out, so the market has changed, and so
That's
they may
true.
want to revise that. So I'm excited about them. I think they look cool. And what's really neat, I posted a picture on Twitter. If you go back to Microsoft's 2015 productivity visions video where they show off what the future is going to look like in, like 10 years, they 100% recreated earbuds from that 2015 video. There's a woman walking and they're almost exactly the same. It's
Yeah.
crazy. That video shows like a Surface Dial in there back in 2015, foldable displays. Like, go watch that video. And I'm starting to really think that video is just like, wasn't just some marketing. Like, wouldn't it be cool? I feel like that video is actually like, no, this is actually stuff we want to make, because a lot of that stuff is coming true, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
So,
On the subject of audio, real quick, I'm also hearing we'll see the Surface headphones too. Now, I don't know.
yes.
I'm not expecting a huge redesign for these. And I'm
Maybe
not
they
sure.
fold.
Yeah, that'd be nice. But I do know they'll be available in black. And that's all I know. I
Right.
don't know what will be new
Improved.
regarding
I'm sure the audio will
features.
be better.
Yeah,
Noise
I mean,
canceling.
and I assume whatever the firmware the
Battery.
Surface earbuds have with the translation and stuff, I assume the
Yes.
headphones will get the headphones too will have that as well.
It's funny because I've been hammering. I really wish they did do fold. I understand why they don't. You actually get a better design if they don't fold, a little bit more quality.
Mm-hmm.
But what? But then Bose came out with their brand new, highly reviewed noise canceling headphones. They're super thin and all this kind of stuff, and they totally don't fold. And I was just like, really? Because the QC35 2s, were pretty famous, do fold up and very compactly, but Bose didn't do that with his next gen. So then I was like, well, I mean, if they can make non-folding headphones, I don't know. I guess Microsoft could too. So I'm not sticking to that point, although I'd still like to see them.
It turns out folding is a fad. Nobody wants it.
No one wants folding stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It should fold
And
just for that
obviously,
reason.
we're also expecting them to talk about the Surface Duo. If the Surface Duo is launching early, which we're pretty confident it is, then they will talk about it at this event. If they don't talk about it, then that idea has been cancelled.
Yep.
So, fingers crossed for that.
But that's that. Hopefully, we'll hear more soon on this stuff. But yeah, it's busy season. You're going to see a lot of companies announce new laptops and products and all that kind of stuff. So save your money. Although I don't think anybody's going to beat the XPS 13, but I'm willing to hear out other companies who think they can. But we'll see what Microsoft does. I think this will be a little bit less exciting. We'll see. But I like to say that because I know a lot of times that Surface team also then pulls a bunny out of her hat and surprises me. So
Surface Watch, here we go.
Right. I got a funny story. I'll tease it for next week. I'm still using the Galaxy Active Watch 2, which is actually on sale this week. If you want, it's on the Microsoft Store. So you can get it for like $204. It's actually a really good deal. I actually bought an analog watch last night.
How old are you? You're an old person.
Dude, there is something about guys where if you haven't gone through your watch phase, well, it's just, I have friends who are like watch collectors, and like, it's easy to go down that rabbit hole. Like analog watches are just like super cool. But part of it's because I'm working home so much now that I'll be in front of the computer and like notification comes in, phone vibrates, wrist vibrates. I'm like, I get it. Like, I get it. And the Galaxy Watch health stuff is okay, but I'm not really using as much as I did like Fitbit, which I thought was better, just more to the point. So like I feel like this watch makes more sense for me when I'm like out and about and need to have that kind of communication. But when I'm home, I'm not using it, or I'm just going out to dinner. So I'm going to try to get back into some analog watches, and I went down that rabbit hole. I bought a Citizen one last night, which has the Eco Drive in there. But I've been also looking at Luminox and a couple other ones. So nothing crazy, but I love the military style field watches.
You just wait till you start looking at the expensive stuff.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah. I have two $500 watches.
Nice. They
But those
tick
aren't. That's
all
not
the
even expensive,
same.
right? You can go $1,000, $2,000 very easily and get
Yeah.
some great stuff. But when you start going down that rabbit hole, and you start looking at them, you're just like, oh, I kind of get it. They're so good looking. I have a friend that he used to, it was just a short story before we wrap up here. When I was working at a movie theater, we were working box office and I would hang out there and like customers would come up and like then they would give their money and he would just grab their wrist and like pull it forward and he's like just to look at
Wow.
their watch because he was a super watch nerd. And the funny thing was the person he would do it to didn't care because he's like, oh, they made that connection. Oh, you're into
Oh
watches?
yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, let's talk. And they're like totally go off about watches. I'm like, wow, this is a weird subculture. Um, but there's something about it's sort of like my camera there, the Fuji X-T20, which I bought recently, which looks like a classic machine, thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Something about classic watches and all this that is timeless, and I mean that pun kind of, but something about digitals that are a little bit, you lose that. So
Yeah.
I'll say that for another podcast though. Anyway, let's wrap it up. If you guys have questions, comments, we're going to start doing those now. So start firing them off if you want to talk about things. If you want to talk about China and trade, that's fine too, I suppose. Otherwise, if you're listening to this recorded, you're not going to hear this part, which is always fun. It's lots of swearing and just terrible things.
Can we get drunk? It's great.
Get
Great time.
drunk, yeah, just really riff off. No, that's not true at all. But you're more than welcome to join us Fridays, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on mixer.com/Windows Central or our YouTube channel where we also co-broadcast this. And you can join the chat room there, ask questions, see our funny faces. Otherwise, we always thank you for tuning in. Follow me at Twitter on Daniel_Rubino, R-U-B as in boy, I-N-O, and Zach at ZACBOWDEN. And we'll take your questions and comments there as well. And other than that, wash your hands and stay safe. And try to get a haircut because you probably need one, just like me. Take care, everybody.
Awesome.
Is there ever going to be a physical to digital Xbox game trade-in program from Microsoft? I'm going to guess no. Microsoft doesn't seem to be too big on trade-ins. And I kind of brought that up with them before. And I think it's just, you need a lot of infrastructure to do that. And, they skate this thin line between being like a consumer retail company with obviously their stores. And they do stuff with their stores for some trade-ins. But they're also not quite at the level of like Apple is for that stuff, or where they could do that volume.
Any rumors on Surface Go 2 getting 10x? I don't think it will ship with 10x, but I would be very surprised if it isn't supported with the 10x preview if and when Microsoft rolls out 10x as a preview for physical devices. But yeah, those builds will be pre-released. They won't be retail final builds for a while. Like I said, 10x is being delayed, so it won't be done for a longer time. I wouldn't expect an RTM till December at the very earliest, maybe even later than that. So yeah, Go 2 will definitely not ship with 10x. But I wouldn't be surprised if you can preload or pre-install, just install, I guess, or flash 10x preview onto it.
Someone's asking real quickly, Surface earbuds, will they have multiple device connectivity? Yes. That's actually a thing that Microsoft really is proud of. And this is something that everybody loves the Sony so much, but my issue with the Sony is they do have a proprietary connection, which they say is because it delivers a higher quality stream. And it's probably true. The downside is you can only use that headphone with one device at a time, which means if you want to switch between your phone and your PC, you got to repair. It's a real pain in the butt. Microsoft doesn't do that. Microsoft ideally wants you to use these paired with your computer and paired with your phone, and you just hand off between the two of them. And so yes, these would be multiple connectivity.
Jason mentioned before the podcast started that his new monitor arrived, which we talked about I think last week or the week before.
Oh yeah.
The Dell. How are you enjoying it, Jason?
Yeah, well, the first one showed up broke.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Damn.
I'm getting my new monitor in tomorrow. What did you order? Razer Raptor 27. I wrote the review. I said, this is the best display out there. I love everything about this. And I said, I'm going to order one. And true to my word, I ordered one.
Only because you have to send your computer back.
I don't have to send this computer
back.
back.
No, I know. I'm only joking.
But I am going to send it back. Because
you're a nice person.
Yeah, I want to go back to my Core i9 2080 Ti. But the Razer is the perfect balance between 144 hertz gaming. So when I want a game, I get that because I can't deal with 60. Please, come on. Now when I have a Core i9 and 2080 Ti, I need to max those out. But it also has supreme color accuracy, which is good because I edit all the photos. And so I need that. And plus, it's a good resolution at like 2K versus, I think 4K is a little overkill. And plus, you don't get it's hard to get the high frame rate and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, go read my review for the Raptor 27 if you want to read more about why I'm getting it. I'll probably do an article on it too.
Zach, did you put Windows 10 X on your Surface Go? I did not because F that. The process to do that was above my pay grade. I mean, it probably wasn't. I just didn't. I looked at the instructions for. I can't bothered. So no, I didn't do that. Someone's asking, with Surface Headphones 2 coming, what will be the status of Cortana being built in? I assume they will ditch it, but anything to replace. So when we asked Microsoft this with the earbuds, they said to us that Cortana will be an option. In the app, you'll be able to choose between Cortana or your phone's digital assistant, whether that's Siri or Google Assistant or whatever. That may have changed since then because that was October and Cortana has definitely gone through some more changes since then. But I still think Cortana will be the ready to connect assistant when you're actually pressing buttons on the actual headphones and stuff.
Yeah, she'll do the out of box experience. Yeah. And then don't forget the big selling point with these earbuds is that they're going to work with Outlook that reads your emails back to you and that whole the commuter feature they call.
Well, yeah. So Cortana will be in these headphones, but I don't know if there'll be the air quotes digital assistant that you asked to do weather and stuff. Maybe not. We'll have to see.
I don't think so. I really don't. I feel like Cortana, like you said, it'll be there for. She'll talk to you when you turn them on and tells you your battery life and all this.
When you're lonely.
When you're lonely, but yeah, I think you're right, and I think you'll hear Cortana if you use Outlook and use the commuter feature. Someone's asking? Oh, how's the pen for the XPS 13? So the XPS 13 doesn't have any pen support. XPS 13 2-in-1 does, and it's a very good pen. It's actually, I really like it. It's kind of hard to carry around. It doesn't really stick well to the device itself. So that's a bummer. But no, the pen works very well with the XPS 13. I actually like Dell's implementation. But if the regular XPS 13, the one I just reviewed, the 9300, does not support any inking whatsoever, which would be weird. I know a Surface laptop does it, but who does that? There has been moments where I needed to sign something where I actually do enjoy that feature, but the chances of me having a pen that I carry around with the Surface laptop is pretty slim. So,
what hardware do you guys use to run your streaming? Dan doesn't stream. Although he could. He has the hardware for it. He just doesn't know how. I'm using a Surface Studio, the first gen, so not a powerhouse by any means, but you don't need a lot of power to stream these days. And plus, I'm only streaming in 720. That's more my bandwidth's problem, though, not the computer. The computer could do 1080, even 2K if it really wanted to. I don't know if it could do 4K. I've never tried, but probably could. But yeah, I mean, it's a Skylake i7 with 16 gigs of RAM. I did upgrade the hard drive, the spinning drive, to an SSD though, which makes all the difference. And I recommend you do that if you have an OG Surface Studio, if you know what you're doing. But yeah, I need to start. Hopefully they do a Surface Studio 3 later this year. I really am hoping so. I need to upgrade.
Why did Sony spin off Vio? With money. They were making a lot of money. Sony wasn't handling it well. I want a Japanese manufacturer. So the good news is go with Vio. Vios are made in Japan.
Yeah.
I reviewed a Vio last year, and I was supposed to review another one, and I kind of forgot to. But I like Vio laptops. They're really cool, and they're made in Japan, all of them, and they're very good. They're unique. They're just very Japanese. I'll just say that. They tend to have tiny keyboards and tiny trackpads, but they're extremely durable. They're very reliable. They do some cool things like angle typing, and they have pretty good displays, but they tend to go matte on their displays too. But they're unique. But go to Vio's website. They have a whole new line of laptops that are pretty neat. And like I said, they're Japanese 100%. So, yeah.
Well, I've lost the question now. Oh, will Windows 10X support windowed apps now that it's moving to single screen? Windows 10X always supported Windows apps. If it's on a device with 13 inches, if it's on a device with a screen that has 30, which is 13 inches or above, then by default it will operate apps in windowed mode. I guess what you're asking is, will they relax that requirement to whether just the user wants it? The answer is, I don't know. I would hope so. I think by default it won't. If you're using it on a Surface Pro or Surface Go, which is sub 13 inches, by default it'll be full screen. And I think on the Pros you might want to turn that off. And hopefully Microsoft does add it as an option for the user. But on the Surface Go, I actually think that makes sense. I think full screen only on a 10-inch screen is fine. 12. What is the Surface Pro? Is it 12.9? 12.8?
Something like that, yeah.
I think that's close enough to 13 inches to allow it to be an option for the user, but we'll have to see. If this hasn't been talked about, what are your thoughts on Microsoft cancelling all events up until July 2021? I think we mentioned it on last week's podcast, but Microsoft did confirm it this week. It's sad, but it makes sense. I mean, if you're planning an event in May of 2021, you need to start planning that event this summer. And the pandemic will unfortunately still be ongoing this summer, so they won't be able to do that. So any event up until June, July 2021 has to not happen. Which is a shame, but it has to be done, I'm afraid. It doesn't mean the events won't be happening, it just means they will be virtual, which is good news and bad news. We've talked about this on the podcast before, so listen to the previous ep if you want to hear about that. Have we heard anything about a timeline for xCloud preview for Windows? Seems like it'd be a great time to test it with everyone stuck at home. So you say that, but actually no. Right now, the world depends on Azure and stuff way more than normal. And throwing a game streaming service onto it isn't going to help things. Microsoft is already struggling for bandwidth as is, so they don't really want to push any more people onto it at this time. But the preview for Windows is coming soon. I think we'll hear about it either at E3 or before E3, so very soon. I say E3, but Microsoft's version of E3, which is an online event now.
Did you answer about the Duo shipping with a pen?
I did not. What was the question?
Do you think Duo will ship with a pen? I'm going to go with no.
I'm going to go with no as well, yeah.
Microsoft doesn't ship pens anymore as bundled. I'd also make the argument that it's the same argument why they don't include a pen with the Surface Pro, which is a lot of people don't use the pen with the Surface Pro. It just turns out people want to use them as computers. I'm actually one of those people. There are instances where I need a pen, and I'm actually glad it supports it. In fact, I get agreements all the time I need to sign. I go to my Surface Pro. But a lot of people don't use them day to day, and that's an added cost. Like, they're not going to toss in $100 pen and go, we'll just zero it out. They'll toss the pen in and charge you an extra $100. Without the pen, they can charge you less. And for most people, a cheaper device is better. And if you want it, just go buy the pen.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, and I think for Surface Duo, this case is even more strong. I think it's cool it supports pen. I don't think there's going to be a ton of people who are going to buy and only use the pen with it. But you'll have that option. And if you want it, go buy the pen. And then pick your color, too.
The other thing the Surface Duo suffers from is the pen is huge and doesn't actually...
You can't put it anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Unlike the Galaxy Note, which has like the tiny pen that actually sits inside the shell of the phone. The Surface Duo's pen is the Surface Pro X's pen. It's already out. You can check it out if you want to already. That probably won't... I don't think it's magnetized to the back. I think it's taller than the Surface Duo is anyway, the pen. So, you're going to have to stick it in your pocket or something.
Yeah, so probably not ideal. Yeah.
With Surface Studio's 27-inch display, is it wide enough to snap apps to the side to work productively? Yes. You can snap two apps side by side and there's still plenty of room in them. I recommend dropping the display scaling to 175 because by default it's set to 200 and I think that's too big. Unless you struggle to see things, then keep it there. But I lower it a bit because it makes the UI smaller and gives apps more room to breathe.
I think someone's asking if the Razer monitor could be wall mounted. No, I don't believe it has a Vesta mount, whatever you call it. No, I think that's it doesn't.
I know it's a bit of a remedial and inside baseball, but can you guys walk us through the whole Polaris Santorini codename business, and do you think that that gives any insight into the delay on 10X? Oh, the code names. Where do I start? So I assume you're talking about just the Windows core code names specifically. So this all started with Andromeda OS. Andromeda was the first code name for Windows Core OS that I ever heard about anyway, and that was a dual screen version of Windows Phone, Windows 10 Mobile basically, and that was going to launch on the Surface Duo originally. Polaris, Andromeda was cancelled, of course. The OS was anyway. Polaris was essentially Windows 10, the Windows 10 shell that we know today with the Start menu and Access Center, that UI, but built on Windows Core. So it was an entirely modern version of the legacy Windows 10. So all that legacy stuff was stripped out. It didn't have any Win32 support, although they were trying to work in the whole emulation stuff, which is in 10X now. But the entire shell was all modern. So just like Windows 10X, there were no legacy error dialogues or scroll bars and stuff. It was just all fluent and stuff. And that was the plan for Polaris, and that was essentially going to replace Windows 10s originally. That got cancelled in favor of 10X, which is Santorini, which is the sort of the best of both worlds. It's an operating system for both dual screens and single screens, so it merges that side of Andromeda OS with Polaris and gives an entire new design and experience to Windows. Whereas the Andromeda and Polaris were very much trying to mimic existing Windows and Windows Phone. Windows 10X is very much not doing that. It's its own thing, which I think is the correct approach. There was also Oasis, there is also Oasis, which is the version of Windows Core for HoloLens 2, which is already shipping, that's already out. Then there was Aruba, which was Windows Core for Surface Hub 2X, which isn't coming anymore. And I think that's pretty much all of them. I might be missing one or two, but that's better. That's the big ones. And that doesn't really give us any insight into the 10x delay. The 10x delay is specific to 10x, not the work that came before it or work coming after it. It's all about Windows 10x and just making sure that version of Windows Core is as good as it possibly can be when it launches, because it needs to be good, as we mentioned on the podcast.
Someone's mentioning, except Microsoft didn't lower the price when they cut the pen. Because they don't need to do that every single time, because what they can do instead is sink that cost back into making a better product or adding more hardware or improving the speakers. For instance, the size of the speakers every component costs something. So if they take away that money, they could be like, well, we could take the pen away, which no one was really using, and sink that in to make better speakers or a better display. We can add this functionality. So it's not always going to, favor the consumer in the direct financial sense, but it can favor the consumer in the way that the device gets better. And I think there's a good argument here that Surface Pros have gotten better over the years in many different ways. So the way they balance all this stuff, is relative. And heck, if they just want to pocket the cost and make more profit, well, I mean, they're a business, that's their right. And if you disagree, you don't buy it and the market sinks, and then they have to cancel the product. I mean, this is how markets work. So
any news on that webcam rumor that Microsoft might launch a year ago? That was never our rumor. We never heard that. So no.
I think it was part of it as an extension of the fact that they did Surface Hub 2, had a really nice camera, and they obviously do a lot with optics and Connect and all this kind of stuff. So it seemed plausible. And the fact that Microsoft had LifeCam for a long time, which were highly reviewed products like a long time ago.
I am shocked Microsoft never released a Windows Hello webcam.
Yep. They really should have like a high-end LifeCam, because they still, it's funny because we joke about how on phones, we're not expecting a lot. But then on the Surface line, this is easy. Like every Surface product, especially the Surface Pro X, by the way, has the best webcam on any PC out there. Like it's miles ahead. The Dell, Dell has it on top now. It's Windows Hello. It's nice, 2.25 millimeter. It's tiny, but the Surface one kills it. And the Surface Pro X camera is like really, really good, actually. It's so like you almost not paid attention there, but Microsoft can do really good cameras in that setting because they've got bigger sensors, you have less constraints. But I would love to see them do a Surface Live Cam. Absolutely. Like, why not, right? Bring that 4K stuff over from the hub, add a little clamp to it. It makes even more sense right now because not only a lot of people working from home, but the consensus is that even when all this passes, a lot of people will go back to work who are working from home, but there'll be a certain segment that will stay because companies are going to realize the value of saving money and how this works. they've been forced to use Teams and work remotely, and they're going to like it, which means the idea of a PC and having a good web camera is going to become important again. So I feel like this is an opportunity. It'd be nice. We have no reason to believe it's true, but it'd be really nice at this April Surface event or whenever it happens if they also announce a Surface Life cam that's 4K, looks like the one from Hub 2, goes on sale, competes with the Brio. I think that'd be a brilliant move. But this is Microsoft. Oh, you know what I forgot to talk about this week? The GroupMe Skype stuff. You didn't put that in the notes.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's all right. Just wanted to. We complained about it so much. Yeah, it only took 9 years, but GroupMe finally got Skype integration.
We'll talk about it next
At
week.
least, kind of Skype integration.
Yeah, we don't even use GroupMe anymore. Or at least I don't.
Yeah.
With iPad OS, Apple owns the tablet market. Is Microsoft's strategy for 10x to be the best tablet alternative to iPad OS, beating Android? Do they stand a chance at beating iPad OS? Kind of, right? I mean, 10x does have a much better tablet experience, but I think for a tablet experience to be good, it's not just about the OS, it's about the apps as well. And don't get me wrong, Windows 10 today, as a tablet OS, is bad because the shell experience isn't very good. 10x sort of half solves this, but the apps still need to catch up. So I don't know if it'll ever be the best tablet OS out there, but it'll definitely be better. But again, iPad 10x isn't just about being for tablets. It's about laptops. It's Windows. It's still about laptops and traditional form factors as well. So it's more about competing with iPad OS in that area as well, where the iPad OS is becoming a desktop class operating system with the upcoming iPad, well, the now released iPad Pro and that new kickstand keyboard thing, which has a trackpad on it. That's going to be a very appeasing laptop to lots of people. So Microsoft needs something to compete with that, and that's what Windows 10X is. Will we ever see a unified UI design across Microsoft Windows 10 apps? If you'd asked me 3 months ago, I would have said no. But now Panos is in charge. I honestly don't know. I think he could whip everybody into shape and tell everyone to sort out their rubbish and get everything onto one design language. But we'll have to see. The answer is I don't know. What's the latest news about the Hub 2S? I haven't heard any news about the Service Hub for a while. The Hub 2S is shipping. If you're a business, you can order one or multiple. That's a product that exists and is out, and we'll be getting a major software update later this year with Windows 10 version 2004, which will bring some of the 2X features to the 2S, because obviously the 2X isn't happening now. So yeah, it's out. It's happening. How old of hardware will 10X be able to run on for testing? We don't know, honestly. I would, if I had to guess a list: Surface Go, Surface Go 2, Surface Pro 5, 6, 7, maybe. Maybe even the 4. I mean, testing goes back far enough, but I don't know if they'll actually officially give it to the 4. Surface Laptop 3, possibly, although I don't know if that's... Maybe we'll see it there. And maybe the Surface Book 2, although I'm doubting that one much more. We'll have to see. Regarding third-party hardware, I have no idea. I wouldn't even know where to begin or who Microsoft would want to support there. Will 10X have a version Pro? No. Windows 10X is Windows 10X. There will be no Windows 10X Home or Windows 10X Pro. Windows 10X is the only SKU for that. If you compare the Windows 10X tablet experience to Windows 8.1, which do you think is more intuitive and better to use? That's a good question. I'm a huge fan of the Windows 8 fluid interface. I really like the gestures and the swiping between apps from the left for multitasking and stuff. Honestly, I would prefer the Windows 8 stuff over what Windows 10X is offering. But Windows 10X, I think, is... I don't know. No, I think Windows 8 is better. Not that Windows 10X is bad. I just think Windows 8 is better.
Yeah, I have no opinion because I haven't really tried 10X. So many people working from home, Windows PCs are getting used more than phones. Any thoughts on that? I mean, that kind of sums it up. I already kind of hinted about that with the webcam stuff. Yeah, I mean, people need... What they're finding out, the story is like, people's iPads don't work well when at home for working. And so and even people's laptops with their kind of crappy webcams, all this kind of stuff. Laptops are always for a lot of people a secondary device that you used here and there, but a lot of people got away from having a computer at home, and now we're starting to see a return to that. So we are seeing an uptake in people wanting to, buy bigger, more powerful PCs and have more serious equipment. In fact, it's nearly impossible to actually buy the Brio 4K at this point because they just, Logitech only makes so many because they only sell so many every year, and it wasn't a big seller. And now there's a huge demand. So, but if you watch the news, almost all the guests on news shows now have to be either through Zoom or Skype. And what you're quickly judging if you're into tech is who has the best internet connection, who has a good microphone, who has good headphones set up, and who has a good web camera. And there's a lot of people who have none of those. And so that's going to change because you're going to, when I do TV, like Fox Business, like I have to go to a studio that's about 45 minutes away from my home. They send a car to pick me up, which is really nice. Although I hate riding in a back seat of a car, but it's free.
You start with the driver.
Yeah, sit with the driver, right? Yeah, because that's not awkward. Yeah, so they send a driver, they pick you up, they drive you 45 minutes to there. You go in the studio, you're there a half hour early. Then you go, you set up, you hop on, you're on. If you get 5 minutes, you're lucky. And I've gone and had Trump cut me off because he said I had to go give a stupid speech. But if you get 5 minutes, you're lucky. And then you take it off, and then you got to go 45 minutes back home again. And, it's fine. I don't mind doing it once in a while. But when I'm happier to do like Cheddar or some other shows out there where it's you call in from your computer because I have a nice setup and I can just be in my pajamas. But you're going to start to see a lot more of that. So, and then it's just the people using Teams and working from home and all that. So, yeah, I think you're going to see an increase in people creating home battle stations again. Because I think a lot of the market, like I said, will go back to work, but there will be a percentage that stay as work from home and people will like it. IBM famously did work from home. They told all their employees, go work from home. And they did that. And they saved a lot of money because they didn't have the buildings anymore. They had to pay rent and leases and electricity and all this kind of stuff. And then they're going through this stupid reorg right now. And they just told all their employees, you got to come back. We're not doing the work from home thing anymore, which really sucked because they don't have the buildings anymore. So they created these little centers, and now these poor people have to go to the center to go work, which is cool if you have one near you. But if you moved, the benefit of work from home is you can move wherever you want to. So a lot of these people moved away, and now they don't have these centers. And so their choice is, well, you can quit or move. So it's, I think I'll be curious if IBM reverses this policy now because it's stupid. This is corporate culture. This is why you don't want to work for a giant company, of course. A lot of people at IBM were really upset about it. I saw a headline about the U.S. military deploying Teams. What was that about? Last I checked, the Army did not work from home. It was Department of Defense, and they have a contract. It wasn't JEDI. It was, I forgot the name of it. It was a different contract. It was also worth billions of dollars. And it was for Department of Defense, and yeah, it wasn't working from home. They were always planning to do Teams, but it was accelerated because of social distancing, non-essential jobs where you don't need to be physically there. Just like any other company, they're told to work from home and remote, and Teams does meet security features that the government requires. And so that's what's happening. So they're just accelerating the rollout of Teams because of the pandemic. It was always planned, and people do need to communicate remotely, even if you're just traveling, let alone working from home. I'm not sure it's the Army. If you're infantry, you're probably not running Teams on the field or working from home.
Hang on a minute, guys. Stop. I need to check Teams.
But this is Department of Defense, so more bureaucrats and managerial roles.
Yeah. With the outbreak, will laptop makers take webcams more seriously? And will the Surface laptop be updated this year? The Surface laptop so far has been updated on a yearly cadence, so perhaps we'll see one later this year. Regarding the webcams, would be nice. There's been plenty of other reasons in the past for webcams to get good on laptops, and they just haven't. So,
yeah, it's a really good point in the sense the way to be fair, the way the industry was going, people were not using webcams. This
Right.
Acer gaming laptop I have does not actually even have a web camera. On a lot of Acer gaming laptops, they don't put them on there. And the reason is because they know the quality isn't great. And if you're actually like a hardcore gamer, you're probably going to get like a Brio 4K and put that on top anyway, because it's going to blow away whatever they can do. So they're just like, well, screw it. We'll save some money and probably save money for the customer too, and bring your own. Um, and then you have a company like Huawei, who famously did the pop-up cam. And their reason, their justification for that was they're like, listen, we survey people, and our data suggests, I think it was like 70% of people don't use the web camera, which was probably true. A lot of people were using it on their phone. So they didn't care the fact that it was below and had a pop-up and looked silly. They're like, well, it's better than nothing. And most people don't use it anyway. But now go to today. And yeah, I think there's an argument to be made that web cameras will become more important, and you may start to see more investment going into that. I would still say you probably see that more first on the enterprise end. So more about the Elite books for HP, or the ThinkPads for Lenovo, or the Latitudes for Dell. And then maybe they'll seep into, of course, the consumer market too, if there's demand and a lot of complaints about it. But it's something that'll be interesting to watch. Microsoft is still, I said, does the best cameras already. They don't need to really do much more here. But all the rest of the companies could definitely do some catch up there.
What do you guys think about the mixed reality team ramping up? Is there anything interesting on the horizon? We don't really know. I guess it's possible, but I mean, I don't know. We all know that the end goal is to have an AR VR headset, right? That's what Microsoft wants to make eventually. I mean, are we getting close to that? I don't know. HoloLens 2 only just launched. I'm not expecting a new HoloLens for at least another couple of years. But maybe there's some sort of VR headset that Microsoft.
Yeah, we did talk about that. About the they hired that ex-executive from Apple, and
yeah, but yeah,
I think, I mean, and this isn't internal reporting necessarily, but it's clear they're hiring. They hired an ex-executive from Apple to be a corporate vice president. Like that's not like, oh, we're just going to fill a job. That's a big title. And they've been hiring people for HoloLens. My hunch is they've always wanted to do a consumer version, but they said when the time is right, the technology makes sense.
And it needs to be cheaper.
Yeah, and it's been 5 years since HoloLens came out, right? I still don't think we'll start to see a consumer thing for 2 to 3 years. But if that's true, they're not going to start that in late 2021. They're going to start now in terms of developing the ecosystem for it, the carrier partners for that, the stores, all that, app developer stuff, the hardware. They're going to start lining those things up now. And from what I think and what we're seeing from these hires, that's kind of what is happening. Doesn't mean it's going to be out by Christmas. Like I said, I'm still thinking 2-3 years out from now. But they got to start doing that now, because Apple is already rumored to be doing that. And again, 2 to 3 years. I'm sure Google probably has something too. So I think we're maybe coming up to that point where it may actually become a reality, a virtual reality.
Do you think cameras on phones should be forced to landscape when doing video? No, because a lot of media platforms these days are built around portrait video now. It's just a fact of life at this point. It may be 5-6 years ago, then yeah, but it's too late now. Can't go back.
Spiddy says, I sort of ordered that Razer monitor. If you did, congratulations. It's stunning. It's a cool looking thing. I mean, plus it hides your wires and all this kind of stuff, and it glows. It has a little glowing on the bottom. But like I said, it's the best all around monitor I found. If you like to do occasional PC gaming at 144 hertz and also have good color accuracy and viewing angles, I haven't really found many. I think LG has a new one that's coming out that's like does 4K, 144 hertz, and does like all that stuff and still has very good visual acuity and color. It's also gonna be like a fortune. But we're just starting to get there. We can have it all. The Razer's the first one I've seen that really gives it to you all, because I don't want to spend like a really nice display and only have 60 hertz. Yeah, it's kind of lame. Also, what's nice about the Razer, it's anti-reflective.
Yeah.
Huge fan of that. You got to have that. I hate glossy displays. I immediately negative. I give you a negative if you have a glossy display right now.
Is the Duo going to launch with Android 9? No, it will launch with Android 10. Microsoft's own version of Android 10.
Android 8.
Yeah, right. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Jason saying he brought home the Brio they use normally for the webcast. He brought it home. Yeah, the Brio's
I'm
it's
using
the
one
best
right
webcam.
now.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other webcam out there that's as good as the Brio. It does 4K HDR. It looks really nice. It's
better
still
be the best for
what's
the price
crazy
you
about
pay.
it. Yeah, I mean, what's crazy? It's like it's really good, but it's also not like amazingly good. Like,
It's still a webcam.
yeah, it's still the webcam, right? It's not like a DSLR. Like
Yeah.
we want to really go crazy. I set up my full frame Nikon here and use that for streaming and blur out the background naturally and stuff like that. But it's still a webcam, but it's the best webcam you can get.
A couple more questions, and I think that's enough for today. If you have any, that is.
I'm not really saying anything else.
No,
Dan's going to use bokeh to blur out his background. Yeah, that'd be nice. I could use, let's see, actually, while we're doing that, I could put on the, if I can find Skype, I can blur out my background, right? Blur my background. Here we go. There we go.
Look at that. It's almost as if it's real.
Looks terrible.
Yeah.
It actually just shows how bad my hair is. My God. It's crazy.
You move fast
Look,
enough.
it's bokeh. It's all natural.
Stay really still, and it might. No.
Yeah, it's got some stuff over here.
Yeah.
It's a little crazy.
Yeah.
We got to get well, Teams did get the ability to do custom backgrounds. That I don't see why that wouldn't come to Skype, but
Yeah, you'd think that'd be a Skype first thing, right?
You'd
Because Skype
think.
is a consumer-facing feature.
but this is Microsoft.
Yeah.
We can turn subtitles on too. Let's turn on subtitles.
And that killed your video.
Wait, is it better now?
Yeah, it's back now.
I still don't see subtitles.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you see subtitles on your screen? No, you can't. Oh well.
Oh, and do we see the? Oh yeah. When I send emojis, we don't see them. That's
No,
fine.
not in the video, unfortunately.
Well, I do not see. Oh, I just turned subtitles on again.
Maybe it's
don't know
working
what-
now. Who knows? Question mark.
It says turning subtitles on. ...
Oh,
Like,
it's loading in the language. It's trying to.
I can hear the fan kicking up on my PC. It's like, oh! That's why I gotta go back to the Core i9.
Yeah.
Turn subtitles off. Sorry. Unblur background. I do have cool background. I'm missing the magenta controller. I don't have the new magenta. I've been very close to buying it, but it's getting really hard to justify spending this much money on those controllers. But
When will the Surface Book docks be back in stock? Thinking of ditching my all-in-one for a new display and just hooking up my Surface Book as a main desktop. I actually think we're due for a new Surface dock. It's been a long time since the Surface
that
dock.
thing is so overdue.
Yeah.
My God, it's terrible. I'd have a tough time recommending you buy the Surface Dock
Yeah,
right
me
now.
too. Yeah, I would wait. I think we might get one this year.
Yeah, I would wait till the spring event, see what happens there.
And if not, the fall event, because there's got to be one or the
If
other.
not the fall event, if not the spring event in 2021. But at some point, yeah, there should be a new one.
Jason
Yeah, they
says-
really got to do that.
Yeah, they do. Jason says, UK English needs its own subtitles for Zach. How dare you? I speak real English. Thank you.
Right. We can
Well,
get
I've-
Jez on here.
I've really struggled to talk this week, man. I don't know what's going on. How are you finding staying in your house day in and out? Not much change for us, unfortunately.
Yeah. Basically easy.
welcome to our realm. This is what we have to do every day. Stay indoors.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no, it sucks. I miss going to the gym and physically moving.
Yeah.
The reason I would
miss
do
the
that, so
pub.
I feel like, yeah. Yeah, and I did enjoy going out to, dinner a few times a week or something. There, seeing my friends. Or going to the movie theaters.
Yeah.
So I miss that, but I mean, I'm alive, I'm healthy, so like you got to balance it all off. It could be way worse, So yeah, and as it's getting warmer, I'm really looking. I gotta get a bike hitch for my Tesla, which is gonna be a project. But I'm a big fan of biking, going on 30-mile bike treks and stuff like that. That and hiking. So I'm really looking forward to getting outside, just do that stuff again. But
Yeah. Now that the Neo is not coming this year, do you think devs might get a chance to try Windows 10X on the Surface Duo to really test their apps on real dual screen hardware? It's a great question, but no. The screens on the Duo are just too small for any desktop class apps. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, this isn't based on anything, but possibly they could do a version of 10X that doesn't have the Win32 stuff in it for the Duo. Maybe they could do that. I doubt they will. There's no reason for them to do it. But they could. On a technical level, it's possible. But I don't think it will happen.
it would be cool if they did.
It would be great, but I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah. Special edition. All right. I say we go. I gotta go take some photos.
Yeah.
For the site.
Thank you for tuning in, guys. We'll be back next week as always. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we're going live. And until then, see you next time.
Bye.